Well, 9/11 for me was an interesting experience. I'm sure it was for everyone because that's never happened at all during our lifetimes. I was a student at St. John's University. I was a sophomore in college. St. John's is in Queens, New York, in the New York metropolitan area. And I remember being on campus working in athletics. I was a work study student. We're at work. We hear, we had a TV in the office. There was a news alert about plane crashes in the World Trade Center, which is in Manhattan, not too far from Queens. So we're like, oh, that's strange. Then we hear about a second plane, and then we hear about the Pentagon. And campus at St. John's, we have a building that has a nice sky. If you go to the top, you can see a nice skyline of New York City, all the way from uptown, like where the Bronx is, to the bottom where Lower Manhattan and downtown is. So a couple people went over there, and they saw like a big plume of smoke of downtown Manhattan where the World Trade Center was. I didn't go. I was currently in the office in athletics. We were trying to just call family and just get to the bottom of what's going on. For me, I just remember being worried, probably more for my family in the Washington, D.C. area, because the Pentagon is right outside of Washington, D.C. Didn't know the extent of what was going on, and the phone lines weren't working. And in New York, your phone lines aren't working and public transportation was grounded. So if you're in Manhattan, a lot of people don't even have licenses. They don't know how to drive because the public transportation system is so robust. And it's crazy to believe that was 18 years ago, but I remember vividly how much that changed New York in general and the whole nation. And I remember working, volunteering with the local baseball teams, the Yankees, during their playoff run that year in 2011. And it was also a very patriotic time. A lot of the baseball players wore first responder hats like NYPD, FDNY for the fire department, and President Bush, the younger Bush, throwing out the first pitch. And I just remember patriotism being at an all-time high during that time. And so it's been 18 years, and I'd like to thank everyone during that time, and currently now anyone who's been affected by 9/11, and even everyone who may not have lived through it. We have current college students who maybe were very young when that happened, but I think it's important that we cherish the memories, come together strong as a nation as we are now, and always thank our first responders for the help they provide to us every day, and in particular, that tragic moment 18 years ago.
I remember exactly where I was at the 9/11, the day that the World Trade Center was attacked by terrorists. I was at Miami Northwestern Senior High School, was just having a team leadership meeting, and the television was on, and we was all sitting in the meeting, getting ready to begin the meeting at some point. And then we was looking at the television and was saying, like, there's something happening right there. You know, we was pointing at the TV, and at the same time we started seeing the smoke coming out of one building, and then now the airplane come through the second, building, and now we realizing there's something really happening. And then you start hearing the impact coming, through the office area where we was at, that has been, New York has been attacked, with terror, with airplane flying into the Trade Center. So that was really crazy at that point. Now we was trying to figure out what's going on next, for everybody with the school. So the principal now calling the district to be able to find out if anything else is going on, around the country during that time. But it was a crazy day, even being in Miami, that far away from New York, but we were still worried about if there was anything else out there.
I was in Dallas, Texas, driving from work, and heard on the radio, and I thought it was the World Trade Center in Dallas. They have a small building that says World Trade Center, so I thought it was a small plane. Didn't know it was actually New York. So it was the first time I heard about that.
I was at home getting ready to go to class at FIU. I still was a student athlete. I remember waking up in the morning, making myself a little light breakfast, and seeing the events take place on TV. Being that I have some family from New York, obviously I was really concerned, but it was something that really changed my life, and I think it's obviously changed the way we live here in America.
During 9/11, 2001, I was in my 5th grade science classroom, and we weren't quite sure what was going on until I got home and my parents turned on the TV. So from one healthcare professional to another, thank you so much for the first responders who back then and continue to risk their lives to help us.
Wow. September 11, 2001. I remember I was in Columbia, South Carolina, in the mall. I was shopping for a hat, and in the process of deciding on what hat I was going to purchase, I just noticed it was a chaotic situation. And when I looked up at the TV screen, I noticed the tragic incident. It's definitely going to be memorable. Much respect to the first responders, and definitely appreciate you guys for the hard work that you do on a regular basis. And this was an event that I always remember.
I was actually scheduled to go to New York on September 14th of the year that 9/11 took place. And when it happened, I remember being at work in Alabama at a healthcare company I worked for and seeing what was happening, seeing the first plane and then watching as the second plane flew into the building and thinking, are we under attack? I mean, I said it out loud. It was probably one of the most horrifying moments that I remember in American history. And my boyfriend, who is now my husband, at the time he lived in New York and actually worked in Manhattan. So I couldn't get in touch with him, and I was really scared about what was going on. And he recalled how he could see the buildings collapse and not really knowing what to think or how to react. But I went to New York later, probably a month later, and I visited the site and actually had a chance to talk to some of the first responders and really just thank them for what they did, because the first responders were just so brave. And watching that devastation really made me see how vulnerable we are as a country, but also instilled in me how resilient we are, because just seeing the way that people came together and supported each other, how the families came together to remember the victims, and just all in all how our country responded. And it just made me feel really proud at that time to be an American. I think it was maybe in 2014, I took my children to New York to visit the actual 9/11 memorial, and just being there on that hallowed ground, it was so meaningful and so powerful. Just the respect that people gave when they came to the fountain, and to go in and see the things that were left behind, and the video of the things that happened that day. It just really reminds you of how important life is, how important it is to live each day to the fullest, and to make sure that the people you love, that they know that you love them.
So on 9/11, I was in the 5th grade and I was in English class, Miss Murphy's English class, and I remember her turning on the television, and it was just this silence that just came over the room, and I didn't really know what was going on. All you seen is just, the first tower had hit, and I just remember everyone in my class was getting called out of school, and I happened to get called out of school as well early, and I didn't really know what was going on. So I got to my grandma's house, and we were just watching the news, and we had seen that, the World Trade Centers had been hit, and a lot of people had lost their lives. So it was just a very catastrophic day.
So September 11th, 2001, I remember like it was yesterday. I was a freshman in high school. I remember being in my math class, and my teacher had moved us all across the hall to I believe it was like a science lab or something, and they had all the videos playing on the TV. And I remember internally I was like an emotional wreck, because I had just lost my mom about 2 months prior. I was, fresh in high school, didn't have, that womanly guidance, I guess you can say. So I was just like, what is going on with this year? Like 2001 was just not a great year, it seemed like so far. So it was definitely something that kind of just threw me all the way off. And I just remember thinking, like, what is the world coming to? What is going on? I have family that lived in New York, but I don't remember calling anyone. I don't really remember, doing anything in that moment besides just sitting there in complete shock, like, what is happening? And I just know that a lot of these people risked their lives that day. A lot of first responders, a lot of military folks that went out there and made sure that those that were able to survive were able to get home to their families. So definitely want to thank all of you for your hard work, your dedication. Today's game, today in general, is always going to be dedicated to those first responders, and just let you guys know that we appreciate everything that you do. So thank you.
Yeah, I was an undergrad, and I actually walked into our student activity center, and I actually watched the plane crashing, the first plane crash, and I thought I was actually watching a TV show, comedy show or something. But when the other plane crashed, I knew it was real. It was serious. First thing I did, I picked up my phone. I called my cousin, because I had a cousin that was going to school up there, and I knew they was talking about the subways and everything. So it was a very tragic impact. I couldn't reach him for a day or two because of the phone lines, and we got scared and thought he was under the subway, because he actually used to go under in the subway. So it's still a tragic. People are moving forward with what we can do. I know we could do better. So with 9/11, it truly impacted a lot of lives.
I was a freshman in high school, and I was going into my second period class, and my teachers had the videos going, and we just are watching these planes going into the buildings, and immediately I thought of my family, because I had my aunt and my cousins that lived in Manhattan. So I was trying to call them, when I was in class, and then there was word that the Pentagon got hit too, and I realized my uncle, was in jeopardy. So, I was on the phone calling my mom, trying to get a hold of my family, and it was a really tough time for us. It was really scary. And all I could think about was just getting a hold of them. And I can only imagine what it was like for people that were actually in the city. And, say never forget, because people that are still living with it and living with that fear and helplessness. And today our game is dedicated to those people that responded first and helped those in need, and are still out there putting their lives on the line and putting themselves last and helping each other. So this is what this game is dedicated for.